Mabuhay! I am Angel Aguilo, a hospitality management student in Visayas State University. This video will give you knowledge about travel and tourism in different eras and history of travel and tourism in the Philippines. But first, why we need to know the history of travel and tourism? The history of tourism provides one with an appreciation of how far the industry has come. It enables one to understand its growth over the century. Ultimately, it gives a clear trajectory of the expected future growth and how one can benefit from it. The term hospitality predates the use of word tourism. It is derived from Latin word hospes, which encompasses the word host, guest, and stranger. Other dictionaries suggest that it was derived from a Greek word for a tool used in describing a circle, in a sense that tourism involves a circular intrinsically where tourists return to their point of origin. Others also suggest that it came from the Hebrew word Torah, which means studying, searching, and learning. The word tourism first appeared in an Oxford English dictionary in 1811. Now, let us take a look at the status of travel and tourism from the ancient days. In early tourism, exploration and travel are essential to humans. People in the past traveled only for business, religious purposes, and traveled extensively to trade products. Romans and Greeks were well-known traders in the past. As their empire grew, travel became necessary for them. This picture is the Appian Way. Perhaps it is the oldest roads that still exist. It was one of the ancient Rome's most significant military and economic road. Leisure travel existed already, but it was not yet widespread. It was limited only to a few and affluent families like Greeks who traveled to witness the Olympic Games, which was first held in 776 BC, and like Romans who traveled for pleasure and to visit friends and relatives. Religious travels were in the form of pilgrimages to place of worship. Example of that is the Santiago de Compostela Cathedral, reputed burial site of Saint James, an apostle of Jesus Christ, and the UNESCO World Heritage Site. In medieval period, the fall of Roman Empire in the 15th century brought a decline in travel. Travel became difficult, dangerous, and demanding. Roads were not maintained and it became unsafe for travelers to travel. Thieves inflicted harm on those who attempted to travel. No one traveled for pleasure during this time, only the pilgrims and crusaders traveled this time. In this period, few renowned universities were developed. The British introduced travel for education, which became popular in 16th century. The education of a gentleman should be completed with a grand tour. Though expressed as an educational activity, the Grand Tour became more of social business. Aside from educational travel, people also traveled for health and wellness. Sikh people traveled in south of remedy for their illness in medical baths or spa. This shows a picture of Great Bath, which is part of Roman Baths complex in Bath, England. It is mostly untouched and remains an example of what bathhouses were like in ancient Rome. Industrial Revolution brought significant changes in the type and scale of tourism development. Aside from technological changes, it brought social changes that travel more desirable. The increase in productivity, job regularization, and growing urbanization gave workers time and more motivation to go on the holiday. People at this time usually go to the countryside or seashore. It led to the creation of work-class resort near major industrial hubs. In this century, the advancement of technology made travel more convenient, and in the earlier part of 19th century, the railway system and the steam power were introduced. Photography and instructional materials such as guidebooks and travelogue became popular, and among the guidebooks printed, the Baedeker guidebooks were the most popular. In the later years of the 19th century, tourism became more organized and it became an institution. Also in 19th century, Thomas Cook was introduced and called as the father of modern tourism. Cox and Kings was the first known travel agency, but they only catered to the travel needs of British and armed forces. And in 1841, Thomas Cook opened the first leisure travel agency, the Thomas Cook and Sons, to help Britons improve their lives of seeing the world. His first excursion trip occurred in 1841 between Leicester and Loughborough, with 571 passengers provided with meals and entertained with brass music. And from 1855, Cook offered a guided vacation abroad. In 1366, he introduced the circular notes, and this was the first traveler's checks. By considering his contribution, he was named the father of modern tourism. In 20th century, the development of the travel and tourism industry has been interrupted at several critical points in history, including the World War I and World War II. After World War II, there was an increase in travel interest influenced by the advancement in aircraft technology. Air travel became more comfortable and faster compared to other forms of transport. There was also an increase in private car ownership, which affected the coach and rail services. The economies recovered after the war, providing an increase in discretionary income and leisure time. New tourist-generating countries arose as economic power shifted between countries. At the start of the century, global events like September 11, 2001, World Trade Center, New York City bombing, the war in Iraq, terrorist attack, and the health scares hit a decline in international travel. The century also brought a massive technological transformation as the increase in internal usage revolutionized travel services. And now, let's go to the next topic of the session, the history of travel and tourism in the Philippines. During the Spanish occupation, travels were limited only to education, employment, and religious pilgrimage. Only a few people can travel to a foreign country because it was expensive and time-consuming. For example, traveling to Spain could take 1 year via the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade route. In the later part of the 19th century, Spaniards introduced innovations such as railroads, electricity, and telegram. In 1889, Hotel de Oriente, the city's first deluxe hotel, was opened, but it was replaced with a more modern hotel during the American occupation. During the celebration of American independence on July 4, 1912, the Americans opened the Manila Hotel, which became the city's landmark. They transformed the remote rural town of Baguio into a city because of its cold temperature. It became a popular destination, especially during summer. In 1935, the first Trans-Pacific flight was inaugurated. Americans reached Manila Harbor in just 59 hours aboard the China Clippers. And in 1935, the country's first private airport was established. It is where the country's first airline, the Philippine Airlines, took its first flight in 1941. So now, let's move on to the earliest tourism organization in the Philippines. In the year 1952, the country's first tourism association was organized. The Philippine Tourism and Travel Association, or the PTTA, is an association of all existing travel establishments that serves domestic and international travelers. And in the year 1956, the government, through Republic Act 1478, created the Board of Travel and Tourist Industry, or the BTTI. And in 1973, the BTTI was reorganized into the Ministry of Tourism, now known as the Department of Tourism. In 1977, the University of the Philippines offered the first tourism degree course in the country. In 1974, DOT, or the Department of Tourism, hosted international conferences and sporting events such as Miss Universe Beauty Pageant and the World Bank International Monetary Fund meeting and the Ali Fraser or the Thrilla in Manila boxing match respectively. And in 1989, DOT, or Department of Tourism, launched its first promotional campaign with the slogan Fiesta Island Philippines. In the 1990s, local civil aviation boosted tourism in the country when budget airlines entered the business, and more provincial airports were opened to international flights. In 2000, the celebration of the public holiday was moved to the nearest weekend, creating a 3-day holiday break or a long weekends that gave Filipinos more time to travel around the country. In 2010, tourism in the country faced three major crises. First was the criticism of the marketing campaign Pilipinas Kay Ganda. Second, all the Philippine carriers were banned from flying over European airspace because they failed to meet the international safety standards. And at that time, the Philippine Civil Aviation Authority cannot provide necessary safety oversight. Third is the hostage-taking incident at the Carino Grandstand when a police officer held a busload of tourists from Hong Kong hostage. To increase tourism statistics, a new marketing campaign was launched in 2012. Within a week of its launch, the It's More Fun the Philippines campaign was judged as one of the top 3 smartest campaign by the Global Marketing Campaign Ranker. DOT, or the Department of Tourism, continued its campaign with the Visit the Philippines Year in 2015 and the Visit Philippines Again in 2016 campaign. In 2019, the Department of Tourism, under the leadership of DOT Secretary Bernadette Romulo Poyat, relaunched the It's More Fun in the Philippines and focused on promoting the country as a sustainable tourism destination.